trying to explain what this thing is, right? I know all of you here can talk about it for hours, but it's still hard when someone says, what is CrossFit? You know, you're gonna lose them. And I'm not saying this is a good answer to this question, but it helped me think about a lot of things in a kind of a cool context. Let's start at the beginning. We want to build a broad, general, inclusive fitness, right? And it came out of this, what I call a belief in fitness, that there was an acquirable capacity that would lend itself generally well to any physical activity. Examples, strong. What things would being strong make you better at? Large number of things, correct? Reaction time, having quick reaction time. What kind of difference would that make for you? Range of motion, you know, flexibility. How many things will that help? Once you look at flexibility as range of motion adequate for functional movement, then flexibility is important because it allows functional movement. And God, that's everything. And so there's a whole bunch of characteristics that collectively lend themselves generally well to any physical activity. If you were to look at the 10 general physical skills, I think you would at once figure out that improvement in all 10 would lend itself well to table tennis and football, right? We want to make a fitness program for specialty was not specializing, okay? And this is all fuzzy and nebulous and really doesn't tell you anything yet. But when in practical application, what is the practical application of what we do look like? It looks like a training session. What happens when we train people? And here I'm going to make a distinction, and then I claim that on this distinction I can hang all that is CrossFit. Let's look at some movements we like, okay? What are our favorite movements? Let's just pick 5. Squat. Yeah, how can you beat that up? Let's get another one.
Press.
Okay? And let's take this thing just to be fancy too. If I say press, it kind of leaves off jerk. If I get jerk, there's a press in there, right? And we're not going to teach anyone to jerk without teaching them how to press. Let's go with the high rich, you know. What else? Clean for sure. And let's put a muscle up in here. I like it because it's got a handful of pieces to it, right? There's a pull-up and a dip in there, so I don't need to then add them. What else? How about just super utility here? How about run? It's in there. But that's a representative sample, right? Mm-hmm. A handful of movements that you'd find engaged in just about anyone's CrossFit practice. Let's look at some of those that we don't do. For instance, okay, play dog, curl, right?
All right.
Give me another one.
Leg extension.
There you go. That was next in line.
Wrist curls.
Yeah, I like the wrist rolls. So
Front or in back dip.
Do you have to ask?
the best variant of it is straight arm in front.
Get that belt burn.
It's torture. You were really limited by pain. There was no freezing up. There would be a willful, oh, fuck it. The hands were still turning and then say, fuck it. So without that delt burn, that's what made it good. Yeah, it hurts so bad, you probably got a high heart rate out of it. Wrist rolls, leg extension, curl. I like leg curls just because it's got the whole bodybuilding world confuses what the primary role of the hamstring is. Let's pick a 5th.
Lateral raise is a good one.
Yeah, lateral raise. So we got a pretty clear us-them, right? You in agreement?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm gonna tell you something, that there's a shitload of characteristics that make this camp really much, much larger than 5. These are 5 representative movements, and we can probably come up with 30 or 40, maybe. These are 5 movements that are representative elements of a family of movements that might include thousands, because we can make shit up all day long, right? Make up new movements. Hey, check this out. But let's look at the most, on the most simple level, the kinds of things that you would learn training using these, especially if you've been in an environment where these were the bulk of what's going on. Once you see the distinction between these moves, on any front, you start seeing a whole bunch. Let's just start with some of the more obvious things. For instance, I'm going to tell you that these movements have a marked capacity to make you tired, and not so over here. Does anyone doubt that? Let's just take a little show of you. Do you understand that with movements of this ilk, there's all kinds of things we could do that would be maximum effort? So circuits have lateral raise, leg curl, wrist rolls, leg extension, and bicep curl. And compared to a workout of these 5, one would have a much greater inclination to leave you exhausted at day's end and want to go to bed early. Yes? Yeah. Is there anyone got any doubt of that? Okay. How about sore? Now I can generate some pretty good soreness here, but it certainly seems regionalized and not as heavy as this, right? Okay. Probably got to put it up here. Rhabdo. Wouldn't you say that there's a greater propensity to create rhabdo here on the left than the right? How about pukey? Just the mess you up factor. You understand that there's a greater inclination, a greater propensity for these moves over here to mess you up as opposed to those? How about max heart rate? Max respiratory rate. Would it be easier to generate that on this side or the other side? Over here, right? Do you have a sense that one of these camps of movements would give you better capacity at this side than, say, this side would at that?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. Would you say that one of these sides has a greater propensity to just generate a better athlete? Is one more whole body? Is one concerned with function and the other form as in appearance? When you ask them what is the value of the lateral raises, people tell you, oh, it's because you frequently need to lift something in this direction. No, the justification is what? It's anatomy, not physiology. It's not function. It's form. That's for the anterior and the medial delt. Now, we may even talk about a tie-in or something, right? Get really weird on you. One of these groups has the greater propensity to make you better at all activities. You look at this list of all these things we do, and anyone's very good at them, as evidenced by what? Good scores on our workouts. You tend to find them generally more capable of just about anything, right? Isn't that kind of your sense of it? That's why we're here. One of these sets of exercises is universal motor recruitment patterns, and not unique to the gym. No one ever brought water up a well during wrist rolls. Some of these are conspicuously compound, but the others are not. One set is elemental in that I can't break them down into something else and they can build back up to bigger pieces. What kind of thing can I get out of a combination of, at what point does lateral raise, leg curl, wrist rolls, leg extension, and curl look like baling hay or loading a truck or dragging equipment up to the top of a hill? In no sense, right? We have this wave of contraction from core to extremity. The dynamics of the movements themselves are here, right? And I always draw this, and it gives us a chance to define something here. Got the line that trisects the spine and bisects the pelvis. That's the midline. And I can tell you that core strength is the lack of deflection about this line while doing these things. This is fundamentally, these things. It's fundamentally irrelevant to those things. Right? Look at how powerful this is too. We've got core defined and core strength and midline. All in one fell swoop, stuff that's being buzzed about. And the wave of contraction, I like to denote it as we start with high force, low velocity, we shift to moderate force, moderate velocity, and end up with a very tiny force and a very large velocity. In a seamless wave of contraction. The best of these movements have those qualities. Okay? They're part of your genetic makeup. They're tied to the macro concepts of this structure here. So that if we were to take this drawing of someone in the macro sense so that you could see the bones and the muscles, just very, very, gross anatomy kind of view of the thing, and ask an intelligent being with what technique would we find maximum efficacy and efficiency in lifting something up? It'd be deadlift. That's just what you get. The levers determine that. Go overhead, boom, jerk. The dynamics, the physics determine that. I don't have a second best method, I don't have competing alternatives, really. How do we lower our center of mass and maintain your stability? Squat, that's all, critical. They're essential, we know that. You can't, for what? For independent living. You lose the ability to navigate stairs, to get your ass off the ground, out of the chair. From the ground, you can end up down there. You can't live by yourself anymore. Safe, I can qualify that and quantify it. These things are safe at post 1 rep max. Our movements are safe at post 1 rep max loads. Some of these are dubious articulations at best, leg extension, kind of funky. I don't have the leg working the way it was designed to work. Now, check this out. There's a practical utility to these things because in various combinations, they look like construction work. They look like farming. Look what he's doing. He's picking that up. He got underneath it. He got it up to a buddy who picked it up, and and we're bucking hay. And it looks like our stuff. These movements have this practical utility, and what they do is they get jobs done. And look where we're headed here. They get work done. But I'm not going to go quite there yet. What happens is that we find out that they're efficient and effective. They're efficient and effective locomotors of the body or external object. Effective. I'm telling you the deadlift is effective. Effective at what? It is the skill, it is the technique, it is the manner in which you will get the most weight you can get off the ground. Is that right, Josh? Is there do you have another approach for getting where we go, yep, you got off the ground, you didn't deadlift it, and it's fucking a boatload of weight. Okay? So it allows something to happen that wouldn't happen otherwise. And for each of these movements, when you look at what the goal is, what's the goal of a clean? I'm above and pulling. I want people low and supported. I've got another alternative there. It's a snatch. It would be very few people's first choice, correct? And it's funny that the alternative takes me back into our same domain here. But it really is the best way to get under something and support it, that you're above and pulling, to go from where I have tension on the arms to load on the arms and chest. Is there a better way than the clean? And don't you agree that at some point, at some load, the only way you're going to get it up is to clean it? And it will there have effect where nothing else is effective. Correct? Okay. What you're talking about here is that this is capable of moving a force some distance. They are uniquely capable of accomplishing work. I'm sorry, there's just no way around that. When we go through the jargon here, and I take you through these examples, that this exercise can do something that no exercise could do, what you're saying is it is uniquely capable of moving some force, some distance, displacing it some force or distance. And then when I speak to the efficiency, what I'm going to tell you is that we agree that the largest load I'm going to get from above and pulling to below and supporting will happen through cleaning. What I'm going to tell you is that the clean is also the key to do this with maximum efficiency. What might that look like? How fast can you get 50 100-pound sandbags onto a truck bed that's 5'8"? I'm going to tell you, you'll be cleaning them. You won't be curling them. There'll be a little power, boom, boom, that's what I would do. And you'd win that way. It will be efficient and it'll get the job done faster. All I'm doing now is I'm taking force times distance, I'm dividing it by time, and I'm calling it efficiency, and it is power. But look what's happened here. We start with these characteristics of these movements, these things that make people strong, things that don't, things that make them sick, things that don't, things that are compound, things that aren't. And we play with this and play with this and play with it, and we finally talk ourselves down into force, distance, and time. But the cool thing about human movement, about all movement, it's not until we get here that we finally have the scientific community, not the exercise physiologists, But the rest of them, the hard scientists, the engineers and the physicists, the guys that understood Isaac Newton, now they're going, and the chemists and the physicists, now they're going, now you're talking about movement. And all these other things, while they may be important to us, and they certainly tipped us off, we don't have something as wonderful here as we do when we get to here. If more force, a longer distance done quickly, is the essence of these movements in our approach, then we can graph the fucking thing, right? And there we have our power and duration of effort. And we've actually been willing, now what we've done is define this as fitness. I now have it in the kinematics, the language that is reserved for all movement. Everything else is derivative. Acceleration, velocity, kinetic energy, potential energy, all of those things are built from force, distance, and time. Everything. Without them, I don't have anything. And now I've got a definition of fitness. And we take it out into a third dimension. We start talking about this over the age, and we have a metric for health that it bizarrely includes quality of life issues that we've not seen before. They certainly don't exist in the absence of pathology as a definition of health. You certainly don't have it in longevity. There's more to a good life than living long, understood? Right? Have you ever had anyone in your family live longer than they should have? I had a grandmother did. Spent about 10 years bedridden, had no idea where she was or who she was. Thought her husband, who had died 10 years earlier, had left her. You know, that's how horrible it was. So now we have defined a bunch of terms. We've defined these movements as what being singular, unique in their ability to express power. That's a definition of functional movement. We've got a definition of core strength. We've got definitions of fitness. We've got definitions of health, and we now have a definition of fitness that can be measured. And in fact, we offer up a handful of ways. Some of the new frontier we're playing with here is I don't have to just look at power duration. I can just give you a bunch of tasks to do and rank everyone. And the relative ranking is a wonderful measure of work capacity across broad time and world domains, where I don't include body weight in the calculation. So it has a kind of a cool, practical utility. Doors just start kicked open from looking at these movements. And I want to leave you with some potent kind of tools here. This is a force, distance, and time mechanical approach to human performance and not a molecular one. You understand that? Where would a molecular understanding have value here for us? Tell me more about that molecule.
If it increases work capacity.
I need better for Ann, Helen, Diane, or all of them, and now I really want to know about that molecule. How does it relate to that? And what we are doing collectively, what CrossFit is doing, is we are building a technology of advancing human performance. We're in the business of advancing human performance. And things that don't advance human performance aren't interesting, and things that do are fascinating. Now, the defining and measuring, there's a lot of that's going on here, right? You know, like I say safe, and I put quotations around it because it needs qualification and quantification where you can. I say essential. And again, you know, I put quotes around it because I don't want people to think I'm being too fuzzy here. I can tell you what I mean by essential. You can't live by yourself without them. That's pretty straightforward, right? Safe. They are post 1 rep max safe. What happens if you try deadlift 5 times heavier than you can lift off the ground? Nothing is the answer. Leg extensions, I don't like the look of the thing mechanically. I don't like the biomechanics of it at 1 rep with 20 pounds. I don't like the fucking movement. I don't have the knee. I don't have the patellar tendon sitting in its groove. It's riding somewhere else. I don't think that's good. You can't do it in nature. There's no run, jump, throw, punch. We can't make that happen. But I just have to build a machine where it happens. And we don't like it. So we do a lot of defining of terms and a lot of measurement. Those things are essential, both. I want you to understand that we measure things because they're important to us. And we can't measure anything without defining it first. I've got to be able to define the field that I'm measuring. Let me give you a simple example. Suppose we're going to go out right now and count the number of bunny rabbits around a set area of the casitas. we better all in our heads have an understanding of what it is. We better have some definition of rabbit before we head out there. Because if Pat's counting horny toads and Dave's counting snakes, the measurement is going to be wrong, right? How the fuck can you measure fitness if you can't define it? We've done both. Now here's what happens, and not until you define and measure fitness. Not until. Having now defined and measured fitness, it will be possible to study an improvement. This is an important breakthrough. You're not going to improve something you can't define or measure, can you? Well, you sure you can. You tell yourself, man, we're doing a good job, aren't we? And we all go, yeah. And you give yourself a pat on the back, and we've defined nothing, and you've measured nothing. But now that we've defined and measured it, look at what we can do. We can make meaningful assertions about fitness and training. Otherwise, what's it say? If I say that you get a Bosu ball, you'll be a lot fitter. And you're thinking one thing I'm saying, he's thinking fitness means something else, you're thinking another, you're saying something else, so nothing has been said yet. You've all heard 4 different things depending on what you think fitness is. So we can make meaningful assertions about fitness and training. Check this out. We can build testable propositions, which is really the first step. We can do an experiment. I can do things like say that drinking less Diet Coke will give you more pull-ups. I don't know if it's true or not, but you know what? It's a testable assertion, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Whereas you understand that if you work the Bosu ball, it's going to make you fitter until you define fitness, you said nothing. I don't have a testable proposition. Mm-hmm. We can utter them now. We can give testable propositions because we can measure the output. We can ask and answer pertinent questions. You can ask me, will the zone diet improve your fitness? And because when you ask that question, I know what you mean by zone diet, and I know what you mean by fitness, I'll tell you, yes, it will increase your work capacity across broad time and multiple domains. I can answer it meaningfully, because we're on the same page. We can engage in experimentation, we can compare methodologies, we can establish best practices, and we can build a technology for advancing human performance. And that's the goal here, that's what we're trying to do. And the experiment is happening at the games, and it's happening at every box. Every affiliate is doing it. And what we're going to find is that regions, people are going to have disproportionate influence. You got a gym somewhere that's got 60 members in a town of 1,100 people in a state with 750,000, and by God, they have someone in the top 5 of the games every year. I mean, that's going to be hugely significant. Hugely significant. Ultimately, what this is all about is improving fitness. And look, it all starts in just looking at why do we use these movements instead of those. And ultimately, you know what's wrong with each one of these is that I've only got a fixed amount of energy, there's a fixed amount of time I can spend in the gym, and every time I like to do something from this camp, there's something over here that I could have been doing I'm not doing. So while you're standing there fucking lateral raising, there's a guy over there that's putting the same energy in the press in, and he's getting more.